Does anyone know what's going on with Kamp Koral? Why or how it even popped into existence? I'll give it one thing, before it's even released, it's already giving people a new type of confidence. If you're having some sort of existential crisis where you feel like you have no purpose, you can at least take solace in the fact that it's almost impossible to be as pointless as the existence of Kamp Koral. Like, I didn't even really want to talk about this show, and I'll tell you right now, no matter how good or bad it ends up being, I won't review it. So I figured I'd just explain why it's doomed to fail. Now, people have been debating the minutiae of whether or not Hillenburg knew this show was being made before he died, and there has been some conflicting information, but I'll tell you right now, that's not going to affect its quality. It would have been bad whether or not Steve was still alive. People forget that creators can sometimes do things that retroactively ruin their creations, such as J.K. Rowling retconning various aspects of the Harry Potter universe after both the books and movies had concluded. And then there's the entire 10th season of The Fairly OddParents, which Butch Hartman was heavily involved in. And there's also The Legend of Korra, which Mike and Brian were also heavily involved in. So yes, Steve could have known about and even been a part of something that goes against the very nature of his creation. And, I mean, he could have also been involved with season 6 or 7 of the actual show, which even most fans considered to be universally awful. We don't really know what his role was in the seasons between the first two movies, but even that evidence isn't really needed since we know he was a part of season 11, which was less than stellar. The reason we find it odd that he may or may not have been involved with Kamp Koral is that he had various rules for things he didn't want in his show, which were rarely, if ever, broken. And there's merit to that, finding it hard to believe he'd let something like Kamp Koral slip by. But here's the thing, Kamp Koral is creatively bankrupt no matter who's making it. What I'm saying is that creator involvement doesn't automatically make something good. I made a video back in August of last year saying that the Ren and Stimpy reboot that Comedy Central is planning is doomed from the beginning, and I want to take a chance to defend myself. That's something I rarely say about any show. I like to give every show I watch a fair shot, and I don't typically form opinions about things before they come out. But it's the same with Kamp Koral. There's no conceivable way this could possibly be good. First of all, it's a show about a character portrayed as a childlike adult when he's a child, so no real changes in the main character. It's also in a summer camp setting, which has been done before on the main show with the characters still being adults. So tell me again, how is this supposed to be new and innovative? It doesn't look like it's going to be. And apparently Sandy is in this, which is just confusing considering in the main show she's a complete stranger to SpongeBob in her first appearance when they first meet each other. I know that asking for continuity in an episodic comedy is a big ask, but this is still one of the most egregious examples of not knowing your own characters I've ever seen. And that's also ignoring other tangible aspects we now know about the show right before it's slated to come out, like the animation, which in some parts looks worse than some PS2 games. It's CG because, actually there is no reason, or at least no artistic reason for it to be that way. Even if Hillenburg was involved, even if it was his idea, you can't tell me that making the spin-off in CG wasn't an executive PR move designed to draw the largest crowd of children stupid enough to not question whatever gets vomited out of the TV screen. This show was designed and calculated as a cheap cash grab and for no reason with artistic merit. Even outside of the animation, the mere idea of having a spin-off tells me that it was heavily influenced. Even if we have direct confirmation from people working on the show that Hillenburg was aware prior to his death that the show was being made, how much is that really worth? Is it that far-fetched that Viacom is slipping money under the table to tell them to shut their mouths and say what they want us to hear? I mean, telling people to lie doesn't seem too out of the realm of possibility for a company that's done worse, like, I don't know, keeping John Kay and Dan Schneider around as long as they did, and... Stop. I said I wouldn't talk about it. Besides, I don't actually need that aspect to make my point. The show itself quite honestly does the talking for me. In fact, the main show does the talking for me. I mean, have you seen Season 12? If the Ren and Stimpy reboot falls through, I'd say it's already been rebooted in the form of SpongeBob Season 12. Except, imagine if you took Ren and Stimpy and decided to get rid of everything that made it work in the first place. That's kind of what they did with SpongeBob Season 12.
Seriously, if you can think of a more questionable decision in animation history, please let me know.
Yeah, past self, I think I finally found it. Like, this blows it out of the water, and it's kind of worse when you consider the fact that it replaces a show that could have been good with something that makes it worse for the sole reason of being different. Like, if you thought the show was stale, you should have just canceled it instead of trying to emulate a show that had its fair share of bad seasons, and then making a pointless spin-off of that. Oh, I'm sorry, 3 pointless spin-offs. I mean, when you're a multi-billion-dollar property that still gets ratings despite the decline in TV viewership that's happening nationwide, I think it's safe to say that no matter what happens, you'll have an audience. However, that doesn't mean you'll have an audience that includes me. Knowing what I know, there's really no reason for me to watch Kamp Koral, or anyone for that matter, because that would validate everything Viacom and Nickelodeon are trying to do with this franchise. After all, can anyone name a single Nickelodeon franchise that has actually been respected by the network since I was born? For those that don't know, I was born in 2001, which makes me 19. And I cannot think of a single Nickelodeon cartoon franchise that was actually respected since then. And what's tragic is, a lot of Nickelodeon's best shows have come out since then, which I'm sure isn't an unpopular opinion. One example of a really good Nicktoon that got disrespected was Making Fiends, which is in my top 5 Nicktoons of all time despite only having 6 episodes. It was based on a series of internet shorts by Amy Winfrey. But here's the problem. Nickelodeon has basically been sitting on the intellectual property rights to that since 2008 and doing nothing with them, which means that Winfrey can no longer make any new media using the characters Charlotte or Vendetta. But this is different. Nickelodeon isn't disrespecting a show they thought was disposable. They're disrespecting the franchise that's keeping the network afloat. By having no quality control standards and making pointless spin-offs, they're biting the hand that feeds them. And no one could possibly say it's because they lack potential. A show like SpongeBob is quite possibly one of the most versatile ones you could have. But it seems Nickelodeon keeps picking the dumbest directions to take the show. Nickelodeon, please, end the show! There's no reason to keep it alive if Kamp Koral is truly what you think needs to happen. But even after the backlash you keep getting, you still won't learn. Even after thousands of people on the internet before me told you this was a bad idea, and thousands after me will as well, all that seems to matter is that there's nothing to air. Well, actually no, because you deliberately leave airtime blank at least once a year. Oh wait, stop doing that? Well, a broken clock is right twice a day anyway. By the way, side note, isn't the Worldwide Day of Play such a middle finger to people who literally can't go outside?
The emergency alert system has been activated. Please tune to channel 25 for further details.
The following message is transmitted at the request of the Salt Lake City Police Department. There is a fire at the Tesoro refinery in Salt Lake City. A shelter-in-place warning is now in effect for all areas within a 2-mile radius of the refinery. Toxic materials may be burning in the fire, and anyone exposed to these chemicals may be injured.
But Nickelodeon, at some point you're going to milk your cash cow dry. And it will be a slap in the face to anyone who thought spin-offs of a versatile show was a good idea. But I'll leave you with this. It's amazing how this franchise has become somewhat prophetic and at worst even downright hypocritical. It once satirized the commercialization and oversaturation of SpongeBob way back in Season 5. Now it's doing the exact same things it criticized way back in 2007. Based on that alone, I'm willing to go against my usual philosophy and make a judgment about something before it's even released. It may seem a bit cheap, but something tells me my prediction will be correct, and if it's not, it'll be a pleasant surprise. But that's it for me. Thanks for watching, and have a good one.